Welcome to Your Family's Health. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Gerard, and I'm here with Giovanni Petit-Frere, a master's prepared nursing student, and we're from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. Your Family's Health is a program that focuses on healthcare issues and resources available here in Nassau County. On the show, we will be speaking to experts from around the country to keep you up to date on healthcare issues and trends. Today, we'll be speaking to Dr. Marc Taczanowski, and we will be speaking about sports injuries. So if you want to know more about how to stay healthy in Nassau County, stay tuned for the next half hour to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome to the show. Can I call you Dr. Marc?
Sure.
Welcome to the show. We're just talking today about sports injury. Can you tell us a little bit about your bio, who you are?
Sure. Well, I am a chiropractor, first and foremost, but after getting into the profession, I decided I wanted to follow a sports medicine track. So that's pretty much what my wife and myself did. We practiced together. We've been practicing since 2004. And in doing our sports medicine track, I learned of some of the opportunities available to sports chiropractors, one of them being working with the Olympic team. And once I learned about that, I decided that I wanted to pursue it. So I did everything I needed to do as far as filling up my prerequisites and volunteering, working with Olympic athletes, and then, obviously hoping to get the nod to go to an Olympic Games at one point.
Is your wife also a chiropractor?
She is also a sports chiropractor. We're both actually sports diplomates. So in other professions, you may be a fellow in a particular specialty. In our profession, the diplomate in sports medicine is the highest level of education that you can receive, postgraduate education that you can receive in our particular specialty of sports.
So how long did you work for the Olympics?
I started with them in 2009. That was when I first received my letter stating that I was accepted into the program. I went out to Chula Vista, California for my first 2-week rotation. When you're there, you get to work with, whatever athletes happened to be there at the time. I was working with, believe it or not, BMX athletes, beach volleyball athletes, field hockey, track and field. And after you're done with your 2-week rotation, then you're evaluated by all the athletes, the coaches, the trainers. And if you pass muster, if you're satisfactory, then they say, yes, we like this person, and they can continue on in the program. And then you get called to do additional events, possibly cover other USOC clinics. And that's pretty much how I got started.
Okay, so what type of treatments do you provide?
So we do the traditional chiropractic care, but that's the smallest portion of what we do. We do a lot of soft tissue work, including active release technique and the Graston technique. We do all different kinds of taping techniques. We also we do the muscle activation technique and neurokinetic therapy, which essentially identify muscle weaknesses more than anything. And so we do our prescriptive exercises and corrective exercises, therapeutic exercises, you can call them, based off of specific analysis. We don't just do arbitrary exercises because they fit into a certain mold for, let's say, like a tennis elbow. We're going to test all the muscles that relate to tennis elbow, find out which ones the patient has to specifically do. And oftentimes the exercises are not even near the elbow. They may be in the shoulder, or they may be in the wrist or the forearm. So those are the kinds of things that we do. So it's a very tailored program to each individual.
So you talked about various sports that you're on the ground in the Olympics, and you're there just waiting. Where are you during the Olympic Games? Where are you stationed?
So I went to the 2014 Games in Sochi, Russia, and I am designated the team that I was with, which is specifically bobsled and skeleton. That's one team. So although I was with that team, when there's downtime with that team, I'm pretty much hanging out at the satellite clinic waiting for anybody to come in to get treated. So I worked with every sport that you can imagine that was taking place in I'm going to call it my cluster. So there were 3 different locations. There was a coastal cluster, a mountain cluster, and an endurance cluster. So I was stationed because of my sport at the mountain cluster. So anything that was taking place there, I could cover those events.
So when an injury occurs during the Olympics, something like the Olympic Games, you're there. Is it a triage situation where you're taking the athlete all out of the games and you're providing care for the athlete? And what exactly is this emergency kind of medicine that you're doing, or is just pretty much more muscular kind of skeletal kind of interventions that you're providing?
It's actually all of the above. So as a sports diplomate, we are taught a lot of emergency procedures. So we do a lot of sideline evaluation of injuries, and we do a lot of return to play decisions. An example of something which I thought was pretty interesting, and it kind of lets people know the gravity of some of the decisions that a sports medicine person has to make, is before the Olympic Games, probably about 2 weeks before, I was working with them, and we were in St. Moritz, Switzerland. One of the athletes, one of the pilots, actually wound up dumping the sled, and because he dumped the sled, he wound up getting concussed. So we were running him through the concussion protocols. We were assessing him as far as return to play. We didn't let him compete the following week. Because of our decision to not let him compete, our third sled didn't accrue enough points in order to actually make the Olympic team. So essentially, because of our decision, 4 guys did not get to go to the Olympics. Now, that's not an easy decision to make. But again, it's all about athlete safety more than anything.
It's very life-changing. So,
pretty much.
Yeah. So when you're, I know that you run an office. Your office, how does it make your practice different than other practices?
First, I think what I'm realizing more and more, because whenever patients come into our office and they, I guess, have been to other offices for other treatments, and that can be either chiropractic, physical therapy, massage therapy, it doesn't really matter. When they come to our office, they, first of all, notice that our treatments are different. It's one-on-one. We don't stage patients like a lot of offices do. You're going to be sitting on some kind of therapy for a while, go do that exercise for a while. The entire time that you're in our office, which is minimum half an hour, is going to be face-to-face with a doctor or a therapist. We do not, like I said, stage patients, and that, I believe, it doesn't maximize revenue, but it maximizes patient care. And I think that that's what's missing in healthcare these days, is that one-on-one time. I don't feel like I can do a better job in a shorter amount of time. I think the minimum I need is half an hour, and I typically run over that. So sometimes we'll even schedule patients for an hour. I make sure I give them a lot of information. I try to educate them as much as possible on things that they can do, so that way they can be more self-sufficient, and they need our services less. That's probably refreshing for somebody to hear, too, especially coming from a chiropractor. But that's the idea in healthcare. Teach the patient how to make themselves feel better, so that way they don't have to rely on other practitioners.
So with the athlete, I'm sure that you, as a chiropractor, you see a lot of athletes, but how about the every common day individual who is in the home or in the community who has a sprain or strain? How common do you see these kinds of individuals, the minor? We do see those individuals, and you know, when I first started practicing, I kind of already spoke to a lot of people about injuries and their experiences. And one of the things that they always liked to report back is they said, oh, yeah, my shoulder got injured, so I went to the guy who works in the Knicks, or I went to the guy who works in the Giants. They may not be necessarily an athlete themselves, but they held that in a pretty high regard because this person worked with a professional team. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show that going to the Olympics is actually a pretty small group of people. So that means that the treatments that we provide probably pretty good. So when people do report that they came to us, they say, oh, I went to this guy, he's the Olympic chiropractor. And that is great, but, you know, everybody, to some degree, if they're not an athlete, they are active. And if you're active and you're using your body, those are the kind of things that we can work on, and we can find out if you're using your body optimally, if you're using your body efficiently. And this could be somebody who had a gardening injury, or this could be somebody who was lifting a box when they were moving something in their house. All of these things, all these injuries pretty much arise, at least a good percentage of them, from muscle imbalances. And I believe if you had to coin a term of what we do more than anything, we are muscle imbalance experts. We find out which muscles are pulling too much, which muscles are not pulling enough. We educate, we do the soft tissue work on what needs to be done, we strengthen the muscles that need to be strengthened, and that's what rebalances the system. So rarely do patients have to come back in complaining of the same issue over and over again. They can come in with a new issue because it was never addressed, but if they come in for the same issue over and over again, it means that we didn't do a good job. So when you see these patients who come into your practice, one of the things I guess is teaching for common everyday life, so that they're learning how to maintain, I guess, a safe and their muscles from prevention from being strained.
Sure.
I'm thinking more of the older adult. How many older adults do you see coming to your practice?
We see a fair amount. In fact, we have one gentleman who refers to us. He's a medical doctor, and he's probably in his 80s, easily in his 80s. So he has a lot of older clients as well. But you know what? They probably respond better even than the athletes, because they don't have any preconceived notions of strength. They know that they're probably weak because they don't do as much training as the younger generations. And you give them any kind of exercise, simple exercise, and they do pretty well. The biggest hurdle we have with our elderly population is, we have a pretty robust YouTube channel with about 95 videos on exercises that we specifically prescribe. And the hardest thing that we have with the elderly folks is that they have a hard time navigating the internet to get to the exercises.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so do you find that the older adult is less resilient in terms of getting back into their activities of life, or the young person is more resilient? And do you see differences at all?
You know what? I don't know that there's necessarily a correlation between age and resiliency as far as we're concerned. We've had 50-year-old patients who are non-compliant with the exercises who didn't get great results, and we've had 8-year-old patients who, with their parents' assistance, cracking the whip essentially, made them do the exercises that we thought were necessary, and they did great with the system. So I don't know if it's necessarily, age-dependent.
Mm-hmm. So I often wondered with the person, individual athletes in the Olympic game, is there what happens with that athlete who has really had a lot of damage done because of a particular event? Are they ever not able to compete any longer? What is the extent? Do you say that there is no injury that cannot be, rehabilitate the athletes back to their original level of activity, or would you just prescribe that the person just not participate in the event at all?
Our absolute last resort is restriction of activities. It's our last resort. We're typically telling people to go and try, but we get them to go and try whatever activity they want to do with a new mindset. Like, say, listen, you need to use your glutes more, so when you do your exercise, when you go for that run, I want you to, not only after doing our activations, you're supposed to feel your glutes more. So if you can do that, then you will be using your body more efficiently. The higher level you get to when it comes to athletes, the more they're exploring every little last bit of effort out of their bodies. Mm-hmm. And it could be less effective with higher performing athletes. I shouldn't say less effective, but they need to rehab harder in order to be able to express that full potential of their bodies.
So what is your most predominant, therapy that you do in your office? Is it the soft tissue work? Is the taping technique? What is the most predominant treatment? The
most predominant type of treatment that patients will get in the office is they're going to get a soft tissue treatment in order to dial back the overperforming muscle, and then they're going to get an exercise, do it in the office, and then they're going to have to repeat that at home as well in order to activate the underperforming muscles. So there's always, we never do one without the other. They go hand in hand, and if anybody gets soft tissue without doing an exercise afterwards, they're only doing half the equation. If somebody just does exercises without doing soft tissue work, they're only doing half the equation. So it really is the combination of the two that is the most effective way at treating these muscle imbalances. And is this something that they could do at home? Typically, yeah. We don't actually need to see them in the office that often. In fact, we'll see somebody maybe once every 7 to 10 days, possibly even 2 weeks if they travel from a distance. But I do give them a lot of exercises that they are required to do daily. And that's another thing. So patient compliance, if they're not doing their exercises daily, then they may not necessarily see great benefit. But how empowering is it for a patient to say, listen, the guy did a little bit of soft tissue on me. I just did these simple exercises that I saw on YouTube at home, and I'm actually feeling better. I feel like, that gives the patients the tools to realize I can fix most of these things myself, just if guided properly and coached properly.
Okay, Dr. Marc, this is very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about the soft tissue work. You're listening to Your Family's Health, the voice of Nassau Community College at 90.3 WHPC. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Gerard, and I'm here with Giovanni Petit-Frere, and we'll come back. We're talking to Dr. Marc about sports